The forest breathed like a living thing as Private Daniel Cross stood knee-deep in frozen mud in the Ardennes in December 1944. The wind sliding through pine needles like slow, deliberate breaths that made him feel watched, judged, surrounded by something older, colder, and infinitely more patient than men with rifles. And the road he guarded barely deserved the name. Just a churned ribbon of dirt and ice cutting through endless trees. No towns, no lights. Nothing that looked worth dying for. Yet command insisted it had to be held at all costs, that every inch mattered. And Cross, 19 and from Ohio, 3 months removed from cornfields and quiet nights where the loudest sound was a cricket, gripped his M1 Garand with numb, cracked fingers and watched fog, thick enough to swallow both sound and thought, roll over the forest floor like a living blanket, knowing that every shadow could conceal death, that every whisper of wind could carry the footsteps of the enemy. And that silence was more dangerous than gunfire because silence meant the unknown. It meant waiting. It meant terror hiding just beyond vision. And Sergeant Miller moved along the line, boots crunching frost, checking foxholes carved into frozen earth, whispering warnings that were as heavy as the cold, and Cross believed him because the forest felt wrong, stretched tight with tension, as if the earth itself held its breath. And hours passed as the fog thickened. Artillery boomed far away like storms on another planet. The cold gnawed into every bone and muscle until pain dulled into numbness. Until waiting became a kind of torture. Until each heartbeat sounded like a hammer in the skull. And then he heard it, a low vibration, almost imagined. Then deeper, heavier, unmistakably mechanical, metal scraping stone, groaning, grinding, a sound so alien and wrong that it froze him in place, and shapes emerged from the fog. Tanks, German tanks, rolling forward at a crawl, silent giants appearing one by one, leaning at odd angles, tracks twisted, turrets blown open, armor scorched and blackened, burned out battlefield corpses that should have been abandoned and forgotten. Yet they moved, and Cross's stomach dropped, fear twisting into raw panic, when suddenly machine gun fire tore through the trees behind them, tracer fire slicing fog into crimson ribbons, bullets snapping overhead, wood splintering, mortars screaming and exploding into foxholes, screams cutting off too fast, the tanks advancing like unstoppable walls of death, soaking bullets, blocking lines of sight, and then Cross saw movement along one, hands gripping ropes, boots slipping on ice, shadows clinging to steel, small engines coughing beneath hollow shells, and understanding struck him like ice water. These were not tanks. These were burned-out shells pushed forward by German infantry. Dead machines turned into moving cover. Battlefield graveyards resurrected as weapons. And panic spread instantly. Men firing uselessly at the ghosts, others frozen in place, some trying to flee only to be mown down. Sergeant Miller running forward shouting orders, dragging a wounded man, and then cut down mid-step by a burst of machine gun fire, his body sliding across ice and mud, and a shell exploded nearby, hurling Cross into a roadside ditch, mud filling his mouth, ears ringing until the world went silent, and he lay there shaking as a tank passed inches away, soot-blackened hands straining on ropes, faces smeared with grease and fear, a German soldier looking down at him, their eyes locking for a heartbeat before the steel corpse rolled on, and he didn't move as the forest burned around him. Tracer fires slicing fog, explosions shaking the ground, the road becoming a slaughterhouse of shattered trees, frozen blood, broken men, equipment scattered, smoke drifting like ghosts, and by dawn the firing stopped, leaving silence thick and suffocating. Bodies frozen where they fell, the road gone, and Cross stayed hidden as German patrols moved through wreckage, boots crunching snow, rifles clicking, then crawled out to find Sergeant Miller dead, eyes staring at nothing, closing them with trembling fingers, dragging himself away on frostbitten hands and burning feet, moving through a forest that had become a labyrinth of horror, passing fallen comrades, broken weapons, twisted steel, shells that still smoldered, German soldiers brushing past within feet who never noticed him, and he reached a shallow ravine where scattered Americans hid, pulled in by a medic who muttered about luck, though Cross felt hollow, emptied of anything that could be called luck. And he was evacuated as the Germans poured through the gap, the breakthrough becoming the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last gamble. Weeks of snow, hunger, ambushes, exhaustion, men frozen in place, rifles frozen in hands, frostbite stealing toes, fingers, limbs, names, futures. And when he returned to the line, thinner, quieter, he carried the road with him, the fog, the silence, the memory of dead machines moving, January bringing colder nights, Germans fighting with deception and illusion, phantom units, fake radios, shadows multiplying terror, silence becoming more terrifying than gunfire, and the Allies surviving not with brilliance but by endurance, pushing the enemy back until spring arrived. Germany collapsed, the war ended, and Cross went home to Ohio, where everything felt unreal, too clean, too quiet, people smiling, shaking hands, calling him brave, while he said nothing. Because words could not describe dead tanks that moved. He married, worked, raised children, built a life that looked normal. Yet winter nights haunted him, metal grinding in the dark of dreams, fog creeping into thoughts, and years passed, the war fading into history books. But he remembered the fog, the silence, the dead tanks moving. And in Belgium, the Ardennes forest still stands, rusted steel buried beneath moss and snow. Tourists walking past unaware, locals avoiding certain roads at dawn because the silence there feels wrong. Because on cold nights, when fog rolls low and wind slips through trees, the forest still breathes. And somewhere beneath the earth, steel waits, silent, remembering, waiting, patient, eternal.